Well, I'm delighted to be joined by Andy Wakely, who is the Senior Vice President and Global Partnerships and Business Development of Instramatic. Andy, thank you very much indeed for joining this Chewing the Fat session.
Absolutely. Appreciate you allowing me the opportunity. Thanks for having me here.
Well, Andy, the subject of today's session is all going to be about voice, probably one of the oldest instruments known to man, but having a bit of a renaissance at the moment, especially in the technology arena. But your associations with voice goes back a long way. You're one of the early pioneers of voice and radio. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, my going back a long way, which I won't identify exactly how long that is. My gray in my hair about how long.
At least you've got some hair, Andy. So
Well, I'm selling ad space here in the darts now, so I expect to make a lot of money next year. But in any case, I really started in audio, in the audio space right out of college and during college. I went to school at University of Texas at Austin, and worked at KLBJ Radio, which was owned by Lady Bird Johnson, by the way, at that time, as the all-night disc jockey, where I did my homework and got paid for it. So, and in that era, we had very long songs, so you could put on an 8-minute Led Zeppelin song and study.
So you must have enjoyed it when Queen came along and sort of broke the
mold. Oh my God, Bohemian Rhapsody was a dream come true. Of course, that was a little bit after my DJ days, but in any case, I started in audio as a disc jockey, later a music director and a program director. And then in the earliest days of the internet, I was always kind of a tech head, and my friends used to call me propeller head. And I was always really into technology. And when I first saw HTML, I just knew at that moment, when there were pictures, I thought, gosh, what's next? Audio? And sure enough, there it was, audio, and then video, and then social media. And then, so I was smitten. I got the bug. I left traditional broadcasting happily for digital, many, many years ago. And I happened to live in the Bay Area at the time. So everything was happening in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. And it was just a great place to be. And I went from being one of the younger staff members at a radio station to being the oldest staff member at startups. And so that was kind of it was a big change for me, and I loved it. And I just, ever since, have been smitten with the idea of how we connect with audiences today, how that's changed, and how tech has changed that whole relationship with the consumer, and of course the measurement capabilities and just more intelligent approach to marketing at large because of technology. Big change.
And of course, I suppose the biggest change that I certainly believe we're just at the cusp of course, is the whole sort of voice-enabled bots and voice-enabled devices like sort of Alexa and the various different other services. What's your sort of take on where we are on that journey? Are we very much the beginning of it, or are we halfway through, do you think?
Oh gosh, no, I think we're in infancy. And I think to go back, roll the tape back just a little bit, I think that when you think about it, voice is the most natural tool that human beings have to interface. And I think the dramatic change that media consumption will experience really lies heavily around that notion that, if you think about it, pecking and clicking is really an unnatural way to communicate.
Yes, I always think that we'll look back in history, maybe not us, but other people. We'll look back in history and see the keyboard as sort of like a little blip that man went through.
Yeah, to me, I mean, it's funny because people say, "Oh, Andy, it's such an advancement voice." I go, "No, it's not. It's a return to what was always. We always communicated with our voice. We talk to people more than we write to them, more than we click to them, more than we type to them. It is just so natural that it is kind of a natural evolution of where it's all going. And I really think where it's all going is that virtually everything that we do today will connect to voice. Everything. Because there's no reason not to. If I want to turn on the toaster, how much easier is it to say, "Toaster, turn on," than it is to push a button? It's just more natural, more native. So I think where it's going is just the infancy, and we're seeing a huge impact on audio listening, and not just that, but the whole world of of not just connected devices, but clothing to everything. So, hey, refrigerator, would you get some more milk?
I mean, it's sort of strange in a way, because it wasn't that many years ago, certainly in Europe, where people were predicting the demise of voice in terms of things like radio, because of the growth that was happening both in sort of commercial television, but also what the internet was going to do.
I have preached this for years as a consultant to broadcasters and traditional broadcasters. When you think about it, the publishers of traditional audio or radio have always believed that they knew better about what you wanted to listen to than you did, and many of them still suffer from that delusion. People know what they like better than any program director or programmer can ever know, regardless to the level of research they're conducting. They can't know better than what you want. So the whole idea of listening to a curated, channel of content by another person versus your own curated channel of whatever it is, not just music, sports, news, information, you name it, nothing exceeds what a human being knows of themselves. And so I think there's a resistance at the radio publisher level of that reality that, people want a custom experience today. They want what they want, and they want it when they want it. And voice lends itself to that very well, because now we've gone from voice recognition to voice AI, which is the first kind of big step in the evolution of voice. When we started off, everything was kind of, robotic, turn lamp on, but people don't speak that way. This is all about natural language understanding. We're already there. Companies like, of course, the one I'm with, use voice AI. We are true voice AI, not voice recognition. And I always point that out, because there's a big difference in understanding consumer intent. And that's kind of what that's about.
So maybe actually you could explain then the difference between, in the sense of voice recognition and voice AI. What's the difference, and where are those two things heading? Which is going to be more significant to us going forward?
Yeah, I think voice recognition is the most early stage, nascent version of where we are today. When Google first did the early stages of voice recognition, it was very, very archaic. You had to use exact terms for it to understand what you were saying. So you had to say, yes, I'm interested. No, I'm not. And it needed to understand those exact words. But that's not how people speak. And people aren't going to use exact phrases, and people aren't going to remember them. It needs to be, if you're going to maximize the relationship between the brand and the consumer, or the publisher entity and the consumer and the listener, there needs to be a natural language orientation. And that's where voice AI comes in, is that this end over here understands, the publisher side understands, or the technology they're using understands whatever somebody says. So if someone says, yo, dude, we know that's yes. If someone says, you suck, we know that's no. I mean, we have to understand and discern the way people really speak in order to provide an ultimate or an optimal experience for that user. And that's really what voice AI is about, because ultimately, using natural language understanding and machine learning, we begin to understand patterns of how people speak, and we memorize that, and we're able to then use that to interpret what the person's saying, and most importantly, what was their intent. Here's a funny example. Somebody might say, yes, I'm not interested. Well, that meant no, right? But voice recognition would take that as a yes, because it heard yes. What if they said, no, I am interested? Well, again, voice recognition would take that as a no, but it was really a yes. So it takes voice AI to understand and discern between those two different scenarios.
And what is it today that's driving the ability to do more of that voice AI than we've ever been able to do in the past?
I think the recognition by the industry and by technological providers, tech providers, and ad tech providers, and et cetera, to understand that natural language was critical. That without natural language, voice would not advance. If we just stayed with voice recognition, most people would tell you it's a terrible experience. Call a phone system. Try to fight your way through a phone system today. Even today, it's a bad experience. It's a terrible experience. Now, some of them are now starting to get very advanced AI, and it's amazing. And some of the robocalls I get, I mean, you just cannot tell it's a robocall. I get a sense of it because I'm pretty acutely aware. So I always ask them a question that I know they can't answer. And but it's amazing. I play with them all the time because I want to see what they can answer. And it's amazing where some of them are today. I mean, and I get them all the time, and they're irritating, but it's just interesting to see how much advancement there's been. But still, I think the phone receptionist thing, it's not there yet. Most of them are not.
Now, where are we in the journey of voice in advertising, in a sense? Because in a funny sort of way, commercials started certainly in the States, not in Europe, and certainly definitely not in the UK, on radio. Then went from radio to television.
Yeah.
In the UK, we actually didn't really have a commercial radio network till relatively recently. And radio advertising was a relatively new thing. But we are now in a place, and you're at the cutting edge of that, where voice as an advertising medium is undergoing what, again, we might well look back up in a few years' time and see as a radical transformation, like everything else is radically transforming. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit about, in a sense, where radio as an advertising medium was a few years ago, and where it is now, where you think it's going to be in the future with all this AI technology around it.
Yeah. It's interesting. When you say voice today, people immediately think smart speakers. They go to voice assistants and smart speakers, and that's interesting because the advertising on those platforms is still just straight up audio. It is not the platform itself. And this is how I explain the difference between a voice-enabled ad and a voice-enabled platform. Alexa is clearly a voice-enabled platform, but the ads that you hear are still just straight up audio ads like you heard on radio for the last 70 years. So those ads are not interactive. What's interactive is the platform, not the ad. Where we've taken it to the next step, or where companies like ours will take it to the next step, is to make the ad itself be the interactive experience. And the reason for that's pretty simple. Think of it this way: in traditional audio marketing, it's always been a monologue. It's the marketer, the brand, hoping they can message appropriately to motivate the consumer to whatever action it is they desired, right? Or to top of mind awareness leading to some action. In voice advertising, it's a completely different, it's a game-changing approach to audio marketing because of this. It's a dialogue that we conduct because of the interactivity and the ability to access a microphone and have a dialogue between the brand and the consumer. And here's how the impact of that plays. In a monologue, you run an ad and utilize what they always have: you reach and frequency. You repeat the same ad over and over and over, hoping to accomplish your goal. However, when you think about that, talk about archaic. I mean, I'm a little early stage here to be saying this, but the truth is that reach and frequency with audio advertising results in one thing, most of the time: irritating the consumer. People don't like ads. They hate them. Nobody likes ads. Maybe the Super Bowl, they might like those ads. But I mean, other than that, people hate ads. They can love a brand, but they hate an ad. And I think that is the big game change or the sea change that's occurring now, because now for the first time in history, because of technology advancement, we can help the brand build a relationship with the consumer versus beating their face in with an ad and irritating them. Because we don't use reach and frequency anymore. We use the notion of a continuous dialogue. And I'll offer just a short example. Let's say, for instance, I delivered an ad on any platform on Monday and said, "Hey, Joe's Coffee here. How'd you like to have your coffee waiting for you tomorrow morning when you arrive? Let me know if you're interested." And let's just say the person said, "No, because I don't like coffee." "Oh, okay. Joe's will try harder next time. Thank you." Take the listener back to content. Then on Wednesday, because they've invested in a continuous dialogue concept, the marketer delivers a second ad. We send a second ad on Wednesday. It says, "Hey, it's Joe's Coffee here again. I remember the other day you told me you didn't like coffee. We're cool with that. Did you know we have 6 flavors of award-winning tea? Want to check out our tea?" So now we're not repeating the coffee message to somebody who hates coffee and only resulting in irritating that consumer and not building a relationship.
Let's wind that backwards, because it sort of feels like a little bit of magic, because we're used to a piece of audio. It's transmitted at the radio station. It magically goes through the airwaves and arrives at in your car or on your mobile device, and that's it. What's happening now that has the ability for this sort of communication to be two-way, and for it in a sense now to be very smart about how that two-way communication works with you as an individual?
Yeah, and then really that all started with digital streaming delivery, because as you know, a broadcast can only be one way. There is no two-way broadcasting to speak of. So when a radio station or an audio publisher at large decides to stream their audio in a non-linear fashion, instead of a linear radio station, but in a non-linear fashion, that opened the door to delivery, of course, on mobile devices. And mobile devices have a microphone, and the microphone can be enabled through technology. And we can serve ads from the client side as opposed to the server side now, because traditional audio serves ads on the server side to the device. We serve ads, or anybody that does what we do serves them from the client side, because we have access to the microphone. And that's what makes it possible to measure every single interaction, and also to get access to the microphone and permission from the consumer to do so. So the big change there on that path was really when linear radio stations began to stream. And that began the whole thing. And of course, it's resulted in companies like Spotify and Pandora and iHeart and all these other companies now streaming digital audio in a non-linear fashion, and also customizable.
Right. Now, what does that then mean for us as advertisers, marketeers, brand owners? How can we start to use this media on a more one-to-one basis?
Yeah, and you just said it. For the first time, it is one-to-one. It's not one-to-many. And the whole notion of one-to-one versus one-to-many changes the dynamics of how you can advertise. Because instead of having the same message for everybody, you can customize the message to the target audience based on what we learned. Just like that example I gave of the person that didn't like coffee, well, I'll never send him a coffee ad again. I now know that machine ID tells me that's not a coffee lover. So every ad is going to be about tea or some other beverage, beer, wine, anything but coffee. And I can do that because I can deal one-to-one instead of one-to-many. So I think the implication to the advertiser is that mass media style advertising will find its way, will continue to fade for most scenarios, and very specific messaging tailored to the consumer will ensue and replace that. So I think the implications to marketing is huge, and also the fact that digitally we can measure in real time. And audio marketing, that's never been possible. It's been a challenge for podcasting for people to know, did my ad play? Did they listen through the whole thing? They don't know. Well, now with voice AI and a connection to the microphone and being able to measure every single interaction with the ad, we know if we're engaging or not. We could do A/B testing. We could do change target audience, change voices, change copy, change time of day, change everything to continually optimize the campaign, which was hard to do with just straight up audio.
Now, give us a sort of a worked example, maybe even example we could listen to as to how the process works, and what type of advertising, information campaigns, etc., are now feasible and possible, and how that would work.
Okay, so technically, just a bit on that. In order for anybody that does what we do, not just our company, but anybody who travels this path, attempts to do this, the one, I guess we'd say, I won't call it a hurdle, but it is probably one of the most significant issues that we face, is in order to make voice AI work on a mobile device, we have to first install our tech on the side of the mobile devices, which means that it's not like simple audio where you have a VAST tag and you can send it out and it's universally usable across the universe. that's the beauty of simple audio, is that it's so pervasive, and the technology to get an audio ad to play is simple. But when you get to the point where you're having to access the microphone on the device, when you have to do that, that makes it a much more difficult process. So we can't just reach the world at large. We have to hook them up to our tech first. And we're doing so rapidly, and everybody who does what we're doing or going to do what we do will face that challenge, and we'll deal with it. But you do have to.
And presumably, in a sense, that could either be a universal app that someone downloads, or a widget, or an SDK.
Yeah, and there's really nothing the consumer has to do, by the way, except give permission. Because let's just take, let's pretend, and they're not a client, but let's say it was SoundCloud, and SoundCloud had integrated our technology. At the moment it was integrated, a request, if they didn't already have mic permission because they had maybe some other voice command services available, if they didn't have that, then it would pop up the question on iOS or Android, will you give permission to the microphone so we can use audio, use your microphone? And they have to say yes. And so we can only reach those people that say yes. But luckily, because of the advent of being able to skip ads, that motivates consumers to say yes, because they go, oh, I can skip ads. Yeah, I'm up for that, right? Because they hate ads, like I said before. So we leverage that feeling, even though what's going to ensue will be a better relationship with the ads, because they're going to get more relevant, more intelligent ads. And that's going to make a difference as time goes along. But if we ask them that question, do you want more intelligent ads? They go, no, I don't want any ads. Okay, do you want to pay for the content? No, I don't want to pay for the content. I don't want to do anything but get no ads, and I don't want to pay. Well, we all know that's not a business model that works.
Yeah, it destroys a lot of value as opposed to creating a lot of value.
So that was the technical part of the answer. The other one is, and we use both SDKs or API. We have different ways that the publisher can integrate our tech. But the most important point is that we can only deliver ads for privacy compliance to those people that gave permission. And they could revoke that permission anytime they want, but our dashboards only allow access to that audience. So they've said yes to generically receiving voice advertising and enabling them to skip ads when they want to. So.
Now, that's the technical aspects of it. Talk a little bit about both the creative and the practical aspects. What are people doing? What are your clients doing? What use cases are there? What's working? What isn't? What do we need to now exercise our minds in order to see how we can deploy this technology for our brands, our clients?
The creative development this is a completely different species. You know, this is not just a bolt onto audio. This is a game-changing tectonic shift in audio marketing creative. Good example, an audio ad. The only thing in 70 years that changed in an audio ad was the length. Went from 30 seconds to 60 to 15 to 5 to 3 to 30. You know, so the ad length has changed over the years, and you know that which was in fashion changed a lot over time and continues to change. But that's it. Nothing else about audio advertising has changed throughout all of the technical changes that have happened in the world around all other media platforms. Audio really has remained pretty much unchanged until now. So now we have the ability to be able to create, to develop creative for a marketer that is completely different than just back to that notion of reach and frequency and monologue. It's really now about creating a dialogue. And that means that, well, just as an example, one of our ads, one ad campaign is about 10 pieces of audio. And they're not all used in every instance because they're not necessary. But we know what the standard typical responses are. People are either interested, right? They're not interested. They're silent. They don't say a word, and we don't know what they're thinking. They're not paying attention, so there's a non sequitur or a statement that doesn't make any sense, right? So there's all those different possible scenarios that could occur. And so we know that we need to create custom responses from the brand to those. We also know they could even do something like, in our case, we use a thing called a strong no. That's when somebody uses profanity. So they tell us to get that blank out. We say, ouch, that hurt. Or better yet, does your mom know you speak that way? But we probably won't say that. But as you can imagine, that idea of having a dialogue allows you to customize any of those responses to what they might have said. I was just talking to a financial company the other day, and they said, hey, we have a real finite target customer. Ours needs to be a user of XYZ product. And I said, wouldn't it be cool to just ask them, hey, do you use blank? And if they say yes, they end up in your database as somebody that you're going to pursue with secondary and tertiary ads. And those people that said, no, I do not, well, they're not a prospect. So you just X'd them off the list, and now you're able to deliver custom ad experiences that are targeted better than any other research might even show you or guide you to the right target audience. But the creative is like 10 pieces. And so I want to show you kind of an example.
Right.
So let's pick this one. Let's just do QSR. We have them in different categories. So this is in the creative development, there's a first 15-second, you could call it an intro. I think of it as a invitation to engage, because that's really what it is. So it's the first thing somebody hears at the point of ad insertion. It could go like this.
You're hungry and you need to do a lot today. You're probably thinking of a tasty burger, but you want it to be healthy. Well, we have something for you. Just let us know if you want to know what we're talking about.
So you'll notice there are a couple things about that. One is it was about 15 seconds. We find that to be optimal through our research and usage. Second thing is they had a very clear point where it asked a question, which is critical to the creative, because the person has to know that it's talking to them.
Yes.
And that a specific response is required. You can see below here, these are the common answers. So let's just say they did use profanity.
Ouch, that hurts.
So, but let's say, for instance, there was silence.
It seems that there's no one there. Let's try again next time.
Or let's say they had no interest.
The only reason you could have said no is because you just ate. But I know next time you will visit our best restaurant chain to try the new organic fresh burger. Yum.
Now that one, that's an interesting response. I'm not so sure I, as a marketer, agree with that response, because if they said they weren't interested, the best possible user experience would be to say, I'm out of here. Okay,
Yeah.
We get it. Gotcha. Gone. Poof. Mic drop. I mean, just stop. That one, they attempted to use a little bit of branding and ad campaign still, right? Despite the fact they weren't interested. I kind of disagree with that. I think it should be a simple, I'm out of here. Thank you.
As a listener to this, how do I know that this particular ad is voice interactive and that I should be making a response at a particular time?
You know what's interesting about that? That's a good question, and there's an interesting answer. About a year and a half ago, when I was involved with our very first pilot campaigns for voice campaigns, it was one of our very first campaigns was for MasterCard, and it was a bank and MasterCard ad. And it was kind of a boring topic. It was a debit card with points, not really all that sexy. But we ran the campaign, and I thought we ran it for the very first time on two platforms, two streaming digital audio platforms, who had never heard or been exposed to one of these ads before, ever in their life. And I thought, how are people going to know? They're not going to know. Well, the engagement rate of that campaign was 14.3%, meaning that 14.3% of people responded intelligibly by voice, and they understood that it was talking to them. We never trained them in how to do it. And the interesting thing was, I thought, wow, if we got 14.3% engagement in a campaign when nobody knew how these ads work, what's going to happen when they get it? Is it going to be 22%? Well, guess what? Not true. It's still about 14% or 10% or 12 or 8 or 16, but it's still about the same, even in environments where we've run a bunch of those ads. So it didn't change over time, which tells me, without any formal research, it tells me just, anecdotally that people by and large understand when the ad's talking to them by the way it's worded. And I think that's probably because of the fact that we've been talking to devices for years now. It's not been just a year or two. It's been 7-8 years we've been talking to devices. Over 50% of users in the United States already Google by voice, not by pecking. Worldwide, that's 29% is the current number. So people understand talking to devices innately, and they respond accordingly. So really, now I will tell you this, that because of agencies being as they are, we actually add copy to many of them now that say, hey, I'm one of those ads you can talk to. And then we continue with the copy. And that's really more to appease the doubters But the truth is that we don't see any better performance out of those as we do without saying it.
How fascinating. Okay, so there's that first 15 seconds or so. What happens after that then?
So that's I named it the invitation to engage. If the person doesn't engage, silence, misunderstood, says no, get out of here, cusses at us. If any of those things happen, we return them immediately to the content they were listening to, so as to create a good ad experience and good feelings about that advertiser, as opposed to its brethren, the monologue audio ad that beats them in the face over and over again, creating a bad experience. So we do that, and that really is a game changer, I think, from the marketer's perspective, because now you can build a bond with the consumer as opposed to just irritating them, because we know they hate ads. Now, if they do engage, and by the way, we're measuring all of this with real-time data, which is provided to the marketer, so they see every single interaction in real time and are able to optimize accordingly. To the engaged consumer, now let the games begin, because no matter how they engage, whether it be a no or a yes, sure, it's instinctive to go, yeah, I want yeses. I want people to say, yes, I want your app. Yes, I want to open that landing page. Yes, I want to call the company. We would think that instinctively that's what we want, but no's are equally valuable. No's are super valuable, because for the first time in audio marketing history, you're able to learn why it's a no. In the world of audio marketing, you can run an ad and you have no idea. You can look at your brand lift study, you can look at your attribution studies, you can look at impact on sales and traffic and all those things, but you don't really know how the person is responding to your offering or that particular ad. You just can't know that, but now you can. So when somebody says no, my first thought of is like that situation where the person said, I don't like coffee. That case, they made it easy. They told us they didn't like coffee, right? So we know, hey, don't send them an ad for coffee, for God's sakes. Let's offer them some tea, if we had that. Or let's skip them completely because they're no longer a prospect to us. So let's not waste any impressions or engagements and pay for advertising against an audience that is disinterested and not likely to be joining the purchase funnel, right? So I think that that's the big impact and kind of what happens next if they engage.
How does one construct a campaign like it? I get and understand now the various different component elements to it. But presumably gone are the days now where you record a radio commercial for 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 5 seconds, and that's it. You have to record a whole series of potential different routes, answers to questions, and ways in which all this is going to be played out. So what's the back-end content management solution to this? And then how does it seamlessly integrate into an ad and gets played out?
So we know that all of these responses that you see the teaser, probably better, more aptly named, should be invitation to engage, because that's what this is. So that's going to be an ad that simply gets uploaded to our dashboard or to whoever's, and that ad will play when the trigger point of an ad has been achieved. Then we know, if you see the arrows here, we know that we have to have a response if they're not interested, right? So we would simply upload that piece here. And these are intended to be pretty short. Strong no, like I played for you, the ouch, for if they said something that was I'll call it a demonstrable no versus just a casual no. And by the way, good point here. A typical no doesn't mean no forever. It means no right now. And we know that. A no is not always a no. It's not a no forever. It's a no at this moment. And that could be situational. So we don't necessarily say, don't send a second ad to a person that said no. Now, if it was a strong no, then you want ad and no more. Because why waste the money? This person is clearly not interested in your product or service. Then we have the silence answer, right? And then we have if we don't understand them, which is this.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Could you please say yes or no?
So we give them, by the way, the reason that has that accent, this is a Pizza Hut commercial from India that we're actually running on Ghana right now. So that's why the English accent, the Indian accent. But if we didn't understand them the second time, and this speaks to user experience, this piece of creative.
I'm having trouble understanding you right now. Go to pizzahut.co.in for more details on the buy one, get one offer. Thanks.
And what we would typically say there, by the way, would be, I didn't get you. let's try again later. Because again, it's back to that whole notion of better user experience equals better relationship with advertiser. That's really what that user experience is all about. But the simplicity of these ads is that there's about 10 pieces of audio of 15 or less seconds each, and each one addresses possible response scenarios. And so they're very simple, easy, and inexpensive to produce, and really no different than produce any other audio ad, except for we try to remain conversational or humorous. We find that combination of a native style ad or a humorous or a celebrity, that those are kind of the ad creatives that seem to work the best. So
Now, roll the clock forward 5-10 years. Where do you see the development of this going? And do you think that all voice communications in one form or another like this will be interactively enabled?
yes, I do. I think virtually everything that we do today, including interfacing with your refrigerator, is going to be voice enabled. And kind of where this is going, and it's already starting, we already have the capability and we'll be rolling it out soon, but it's going to continue to get bigger, is measuring more than just responses, voice responses, but we're already measuring age, because once we have millions and millions of responses that we could track back to an age range, we can get pretty accurate about knowing the approximate age of the consumer. We also can know their gender pretty easily, typically, and get pretty accurate about gender. And now we're even doing emotions. So we know if they're angry, they're sad, they're happy. Those are important emotions as well, because you could then begin to use that data to create more intelligent, more relevant ad campaigns on behalf of advertisers. If somebody shows that they're depressed, well, we send them to the Xanax site. No, I'm just kidding. but in any case,
I mean, the more you talk about this, the more it nudges towards the spooky end of the spectrum, as opposed to the helpful end of the spectrum.
Well,
I mean, presumably
yeah.
at some point, the type of data that you'll be able to glean from
Except we don't know
voice
who you are.
is
Don't know who you are.
right.
And we respect privacy in that and stay compliant by having no personally identifiable information. So we don't know it's you. What we do know is your MAID. We know the mobile ID, right? The machine ID. We know that. And that's what we're tied back to for being more intelligent about the ads. But since we don't know who you are, one could make the argument, and there's always going to be those conspiracy theorists, about voice.
Indeed.
But look at the difference between smart speakers and us. A smart speaker microphone is always on, and it's waiting for a wake word, but it's on, listening, all times, 24/7. Our microphones are always off, because we only turn it on at the end of our first invitation to engage. We turn it on for 3 seconds. And on like iOS devices, a little red bar even appears across the top that tells you the mic's on, just like it does on a computer screen. Not from us, because we don't do computer screens, but you get it. So I think that there's a strong case to be made that voice-enabled ads are much less intrusive than smart speakers, because we don't have the mic always on and we don't use wake words. We turn it on for 3 seconds and it's off by default. There's that. And then, of course, we don't know. We have no idea who you are. And if we did have any information on you, we destroy it every single day. So we will not retain that, because it's privacy. The laws dictate such. And it's appropriate for us not to know. And I think not respecting privacy would only destroy our industry and where this is all headed. We need to be responsible about how we do those things, and maintain that it's a good thing that we don't know who you are. We don't need to know.
Now, what advice, Andy, would you give people who've been intrigued by this and feel like they should be experimenting?
Yeah, that's kind of exactly how we approach it. I mean, I don't want to make this like an ad for ourselves, but I'm being sensitive to that. But I think that running pilot campaigns is the best approach, because this is also early stage that we don't know everything about. We don't know everything about this. We're testing and pivoting and all the time to see what works and what doesn't, which is why it's super cool that we could measure every single interaction, as you see on the screen here, with that ad, because we can study this and say, what are we learning? What are we seeing? when people respond to certain keywords, to certain voices. We've already learned, for instance, that for whatever reason, female voices produce better response than male voices. We don't know why. I mean, we'll learn why, but we don't know why. We just know that it's true. So because the facts tell us that. Because we're playing with empirical data, we can learn so much about this. And the more ads we deliver, the more we learn.
Finally, Andy, because we've sort of almost run out of time, but the last question for you. The combination now of voice and artificial intelligence, one could make the case, I suppose, to say that everything is going to be voice enabled and all voice enablement is going to be AI powered. Would you agree with that? And if so, does that make us as a society and humans better or worse?
Well, yeah, it's kind of, it's probably unfair to ask me that question because my answer is pretty obvious, and it's not because I'm part of this company, but I would say that the answer is absolutely yes. Everything will be voice. Many things will be voice enabled if it's practical, and voice AI will be a natural language understanding, and machine learning will be deployed and used. And I think that makes it better. And my argument for that is simply this. Would you rather receive an ad for a pneumatic jackhammer or a pizza? Chances are you prefer pizzas over pneumatic jackhammers. And one could argue that that's a better user experience than just receiving random, irrelevant ads that do nothing but irritate you. So the other side of that, the privacy side, I think is only an issue if we know who you are. Since we don't know who you are, why are you so flipped out over the idea that your media understands more about you, more about your device, not about you? If it knew you, I would have to agree with the naysayers of privacy. I would agree with them because I don't want my machines knowing. And I do think about smart speakers at times that the mic's always on. How do I know if it's listening? Well, we know it's listening because how would it hear me say, "Hey, Alexa"?
Yes, I mean, we absolutely do know it's listening.
It's listening. What we don't know is anybody listening, truly listening. Are they recording anything? And there's been enough cases where bad things have happened, where a person started receiving ads that was relevant to a private conversation they had, and they couldn't have known to deliver those ads. And they had to say, "Hey, if it's not really listening to me, why did I mysteriously start getting these ads?" And I think that's a violation. That should be illegal. And it is, I think, illegal, but it should remain illegal and should remain enforced. And the industry should self-police and stay true to the idea of no personally identifiable information.
It's been a fascinating discussion. I'm sure that the developments over the course of the next 2 to 3 years are going to go in massive incremental steps. But for the moment, Andy Wakely, the Senior Vice President of Global Partnerships and Business Development for Instrumatic. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. It's been amazingly illuminating. And I shall look at my Alexa device with slightly wider eyes next time. Thanks very much indeed.
Understood. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.